In this video, we're going to be talking about our first review topic of the year. We're going to be talking about order of operations, especially ones using exponents. In addition, we're going to be talking about simplifying and evaluating expressions and equations. So to get started, let's just clarify a couple of quick definitions that should be somewhat familiar to you. And that'll be these three definitions. I would encourage you to pause the video at any point that you need to write these into your notes. Obviously, I will talk faster than you can write, so please pause whenever you need. So our first definition is the word simplify. The word simplify simply tells us to, the official definition is replace a numerical expression with its simplest form. Now, what does that mean? That could mean anything from taking a math problem like 8 plus 5, and the word simplify would be appropriate here because it's telling us to take this math problem and go ahead and put it in its simplest form. In other words, do the math that you can do. And 8 plus 5, of course, is 13. So I've simplified that mathematical expression, 8 plus 5 equals 13. Now, obviously, that's a very trivial, simple example of what simplify means, but it is a good start for us. Next definition is going to be the word exponent, and I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. An exponent is talking about repeated multiplication. So an exponent is the number of times that a different number called the base is used as a factor. So in other words, I have this example here of 2 to the fourth. So the base is 2 and the exponent is 4. And so what that exponent of 4 is telling us is take the base and multiply it by itself that many times. So 2 to the fourth power is how we would say that. And that is just telling us to take 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which, if we do the math on that, should be 2 times 2 is 4. So that makes 4. 4 times 2, now we're up to 8, and 8 times 2 is 16. So going back to our definition of simplify, if I had the math problem 2 to the fourth, I could simplify it. In other words, replace it with its simpler form, which would be 16. And then the last definition is going to be the word evaluate. And evaluate is a lot like simplify, except this time what it's implying is that we have some expression that has a variable in it. And you are given the value of the variable. And so we will plug that in, and then we are simplifying. So we'll come back to that in a minute, but this could be something as simple as I might have the math problem 2x plus 5. Now, 2x plus 5 by itself, the word simplify could apply, except there's nothing for us to do because we cannot add unlike things together. So simplifying 2x plus 5 is just leaving it alone because we can't do anything to it. However, if I happen to come by and tell you that x is equal to 4, now if I tell you to evaluate it, what I'm telling you to do is take my algebraic expression, and now what we're going to do is we are going to substitute in the number that we now know that x is. So that makes it the problem 2 times, and now I'm going to replace the x with what we know x to be. And I get the problem 2x becomes 2 times the x value, which is 4, plus 5. And so today we're going to be talking about answering these questions and using order of operations. So quickly, we should hopefully know that in a problem like this, the order of operations, when we look at this, we see 2 operations, I hope, and I have multiply and I have add. And so we should know, and we'll review it in a moment, that multiplication comes before addition. So I'm going to do 2 times 4. I'm going to double 4, and I'm going to get 8. And then I still have to do the 8 plus 5. And 8 plus 5, as we talked about earlier, is 13. So I have done 2 things here. I have evaluated it, meaning I have taken the x equals 4 and plugged it in, and then I have simplified it to its value, which we know is going to be 13. All right, so evaluate and simplify go together. All right. The main topic of today, however, is just to review something that you should be very familiar with, and that is the order of operation. And the order of operations is a very simple concept as long as you can get out of your kind of your own way and not default to like language arts. Language arts, we read left to right, and so we're conditioned to start at the left and move to the right. We have to violate that when we're doing order of operations because the order depends on the operations involved. And as long as you can just slow yourself down and take stock of what operations are in the problem, then you just do those operations first, and it becomes a very simple process. The complicated part is just getting out of your own way sometimes and slowing down and evaluating what's there. So, what does it mean for PEMDAS? Is the kind of typical abbreviation we use, and it simply stands for, and we'll go through this as we look at the steps: parentheses for P, exponents, and then multiplication and division, addition and subtraction. And so the order, we're going to do anything inside of parentheses that we can do first. We're going to do exponents second, and then the multiply and divide are at the same level. So that's the third step, and then the add and subtract are at their own level, and that's the fourth step. So that's what it says below. Perform any operations inside grouping symbols, and so that is what the parentheses is representing. Now, other things can be grouping symbols besides parentheses. Parentheses is the most common, but you could also see it as a bracket. That's very common, and they have no different meaning. Oftentimes, you'll see brackets instead of parentheses or in addition to parentheses when a problem is kind of getting very layered and there's multiple parentheses. So a bracket just kind of helps the user see, hey, this is still a grouping symbol, but it's different. And we'll look at some examples of that, I think, today. There are additional grouping symbols, but I'm not going to complicate today. We're just going to keep it pretty basic. Then we're going to simplify any powers, any exponents, right? So powers, another word for powers is exponents. Then we multiply and divide. And this is where we do look left to right. So when you're doing multiplication and division, if that's all you have in the problem, then you are going to move left to right on that. And if you're down to adding and subtracting, that is the last thing you're going to do. And if you have more than one, you're going to move and do the left one and then the right one. And so we'll look at some examples of all of this right now. We're not going to do the very, very most basic example because this is all review. So we're going to jump into one that's got a little bit going on here. So example number 1A. Again, please pause the video, write the problem down, and then maybe even work on it and try it before you listen to me, and then check back in to see how you did. All right, as we're evaluating this problem, we don't have to make it super complicated, but I am going to stop and just take stock of what I have in the problem. Because if I just jump into it without thinking, I'm likely to make a mistake. So as I look at this problem, I'm going to look at it left to right, and I see that I have a subtraction problem. I see the next operation I see is a multiplication. And then the last thing, oh, not the last thing, and then I have an addition. And then on the farthest right, I have an exponent. Okay, I have my subtract, I have a multiply, I have an add, and then I have this 3 to the second power, which is the fourth operation. But just because that's the order from left to right, that doesn't mean that's the order we do it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be very basic about this and follow the order of operations exactly as it says. And so the order of operations, let me scroll down a little bit so we can see it, is again, we start with any parentheses. So I look at this problem, I see no grouping symbols. So I get to skip that. Next up, we have exponents. I do have an exponent. So this is going to be the first thing that I do. And so the exponent is 3 to the second power. So I'm just going to rewrite the problem, and I'm just going to do one operation at a time. Now, as you get better at this, you can, of course, kind of maybe do a couple things at the same time, but I'm going to keep it very basic. 3 squared, I have to remember, means 3 times 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. So 3 squared is 9. All right, so now I have scratched off the exponent, and the next thing I'm going to do is I look at this and I have a multiplication, a subtraction, and addition left. And so multiplication has to be the second thing that I do. And so what am I multiplying? The problem says you're going to multiply an 8 times a 2. And so that's what I'm going to do. So I haven't touched the 25, so that's still there. I still have a minus sign, and 8 times 2 we know is 16. And then I have a plus 9, and I'm going to write a plus 9. So I have done my multiplication right here. I've done that because that's, oops, let's not do that. Control Z. So that times 2, that 8 times 2 was the second thing that we did. And now you'll notice we're left with just subtraction and addition. We don't have to worry about multiply and divide on this one. Actually, we did. We already took care of it. And now we have add and subtract, and we're going to go from left to right. So now I get to do what our instincts tell us to do, which is just start at the left and start working to the right. So 25 minus 16 will be the first math that I do. And 25 minus 16 is 9. And so that turns into 9. And then I have plus 9 left, and 9 plus 9 is 18. Now, talking through this problem, it's taken me about 3 or 4 minutes to do. But in reality, you're going to be able to do this very quickly because you're not going to be talking this through. Taking your time, it would be hard to stretch this problem longer than about a minute, and that might be pushing it. So get used to finding the list of things that you need to do, and then go through them according to the order of operations. All right, so part B, let's take a look at this one. Again, please pause the video and check back in when you're done. So this one's a little easier. Probably should have started with this one, but this one I simply have a subtraction and I have a division. So when I check in on my order of operations, I know that division comes before subtraction. So I'm not going to do 6 minus 10. I'm going to do 10 divided by 5. And so that gives me 6 minus, and then 10 divided by 5 is a 2. So that's taken care of. And then the only thing left is 6 minus 2, and the answer would be 4. All right, nice and straightforward. If you pay attention to it, it's pretty easy to get it right. All right, this last one for for example 1, part C. Let's take a look at our order. We've got a multiplication. We have an addition listed. And again, I'm not talking about the order we're going to do it. I'm just looking at what we have. I have a division, and I have an exponent. So again, pause the video, do it yourself, and check back in to see if we get the same answer. All right, so order of operations, I'm going to do my exponent first. And so that's 2 squared. So I have 4 times 7 plus 4 divided by 2 times 2, 2 squared, right? 2 squared, 2 times 2 is 4. So that's taken care of. Next up, I have a multiplication and I have a division. They're not next to each other. We have a plus sign in between. So it really doesn't matter which one we kind of think of first. We kind of need to do them both before we do the addition. So let's go ahead and look on the left side. It has 4 times 7, which we know is 28. Plus, because we're not doing addition yet, and to save ourselves a little time in writing, we can go ahead and do the 4 divided by 4 at the same time, and that's 1. So I did this multiplication first, right? I did that, and then I did this division then second after I did the exponent, right? So 4 divided by 4. And the addition here separates it because that's the last thing I'm going to do. So I've got my 4 times 7 is 28, got 4 divided by 4 is 1, and now I add them together, and I simply get 29. All right, so now let's move on to example 2, and this is just going to up the difficulty a little bit because we're going to throw in some grouping symbols. So I look at this problem, and I clearly see, as I go and I look down my PEMDAS list, I see that I have parentheses, and in fact, I have 2 sets of parentheses. So all that means is ignore everything else and go into that world of parentheses. So I see a 13 minus 7. So now I'm in this world of 13 minus 7. There's only one operation in there, and that's the one I'm going to do. So this just becomes 15 times 13 minus 7 is going to be 6. So this problem turns into 15 times 6. And then I have it divided by. And then inside that world, there's only one operation, an 8 minus 5. So I'm going to do that, and I get 3. All right. So now we have to make a decision. What do I have left? So we should know at this level that 15 next to a 6 in parentheses like this means to multiply. So I'm looking at a multiply and a divide, which we know are at the same level. And so I should be able to go from left to right and get the answer. So the first thing I need to do is figure out what 15 times 6 is and get that answer. So 15 times 6, 6 times 5 is 30. Carry the 3, 6, I get 90. So this is 90 divided by 3. Do the left operation and the right operation because they're at the same level. And 90 divided by 3 now is going to be what? 30. I want to demonstrate to you that my work is going down the page and I'm showing kind of one step at a time for the most part. I'm not jumping right to the answer. I'm being deliberate and taking my time. All right, part B. All right, I got a lot going on in there, and I'm not going to worry myself about a lot of it until I worry about the parentheses. So each parenthesis is its own little world, and so I'm going to look at the first one as if it's its own math problem. So clearly we have a 5 plus 3. I didn't give myself a lot of room, so I'm just going to write the answer. Well, let's write it here, and then I'll probably move to the left. So 5 plus 3 we know is 8. I'm not going to do anything with it divided by 2. I have a plus. I'm not touching any of that stuff. And I found another parentheses. So within that parentheses, you'll notice I have two operations. I have my exponent and I have a subtraction. And so now I'm treating this as its own math problem. So I know that 5 squared minus 3, and I'll kind of write this out probably more than I would if I was doing this for my own assignment. I know that 5 squared makes 25. So that leaves me with 25 minus 3 in parentheses. All right, I'm now going to move this up here. I still have a parentheses the way I'm deliberately showing my work, so I'm just going to rewrite everything else. I have an 8 divided by 2 plus 25 minus 3 is going to be 22. All right, so all I've done, taken a little bit of time to do it, is I've figured out what this parenthesis equals, and it's an 8. And I figured out what this parenthesis equals, and it turned out to be 22. So now I don't have any more grouping symbols, and so now I'm going to look at the problem as a whole. And I have, hopefully, obviously, a division and an addition, and I know that division comes first. 8 divided by 2 is a 4, and so I'm left with 4 plus 22, and the answer would be 26. All right, now we're going to look at example 3, and the problem just gets a little bit more complicated, but the rules haven't changed. So I'm looking at this problem, and now I see two sets of grouping symbols. I have a bracket, and I have a parentheses. And the rule is you go to the innermost set of grouping symbols and do those first. Because every time you see a grouping symbol, it kind of creates its own world, its own math problem. We do that. So as I'm looking at this, essentially what I'm seeing is these brackets tell me, hey, for now, and I'll erase this in a minute, and now you don't need the 2. Like, ignore that 2 for now. So I'm looking and I have a brackets. So I'm looking at the brackets. And so now inside the brackets, I'm seeing, hey, what do you know? I have, in this new problem, I have another set of parentheses. So what does that tell us? That means I get to ignore everything else for now and just do what this says. So now I'm just focusing on the 13 minus 7. That's the first thing I have to do because that's the innermost set of parentheses. All right, so the 2 is still here, haven't touched it. The bracket's still here. 13 minus 7 is the math I'm going to do, and 13 minus 7 is 6. So I've turned that 13 minus 7 into a 6, but that 6 is being squared. And then I have it divided by 3, which I haven't touched, and then I close my grouping symbol. So now as I go to look at this, again, I'm going to ignore the 2 because I have to do grouping symbols first. Within the grouping symbols, I see exponent and I see division. So I have to do the exponent first. So I'm still ignoring this 2. I'm going to do my grouping symbol. 6 squared is 36. Divided by 3, close the grouping symbol. 36 divided by 3 is 12. So now I have 2 times 12. And this bracket is just like a parenthesis. It just means multiply at this point. So I just have 2 times 12, which is 24. So that seems maybe more complicated to some of you, but again, it just means take your time, do it in the right order. So grouping symbols, then exponents, and then multiply, divide, add, subtract. All right, part B. Here we go. I see a bracket. So I'm sort of, I'll erase this, but I'm ignoring the 12 plus 3 sitting out here because it's not what I'm going to worry about. And now I have brackets. So I'm like, okay, this is my new math problem. All right, within this new math problem, I have a parentheses. So I'm going to ignore all of this stuff. And now I'm just going to figure out what 16 minus 13 is. Okay, because that is the innermost set of brackets, innermost set of parentheses. So I'm not touching the 12. I'm not touching the plus 3 times 18 minus 5. All of that stuff I'm not touching, but I am going to answer the question, what is 16 minus 13, which is 3? Close that parentheses, close that bracket. Now I do it again. I analyze the problem. I have brackets. Within the brackets, I have a 18 minus a 5 times 3. So what comes first in those brackets is subtraction or multiplication. We know it's multiplication. So I have 12 plus 3 bracket 18 minus, and I'm going to do the math, I get 15. Now, keep going. Brackets come first inside the parentheses, inside the grouping symbols. So I get 12 plus 3 times, and if you want to switch to parentheses here, it does not matter. 18 minus 15 is 3. So as much as it has looked very appealing to do 12 plus 3, 12 plus 3 this whole time, we're not going to do 12 plus 3 because we know that at this point, multiplication, 3 times 3, comes before the addition. So it isn't 12 plus 3. It's actually going to be 12 plus 3 times 3 is 9. 12 plus 9, of course, is going to be 21. All right, part C. All right, so as we look at part C, I've got a parentheses. And so inside those parentheses, I have to go first. Now, hopefully, we know that this is a division right here. Okay, so this is going to cause a little bit of discussion that I'm not sure I wanted to have today, but here we go anyway. A division can act as a grouping symbol in this case specifically, because what we have is a 6 plus a 9 all divided by 3. So if I just look at that problem, it's basically telling me without writing it, you need to do the 6 plus the 9 first, and then you're going to divide all of that by 3. That is what this problem says inside those parentheses. Do 6 plus 9 because you'll notice this fraction bar is over all of that. So that is implying to us, it's telling us do that numerator simplification first and then divide it by 3. All right. So with that in mind, treating that like a grouping symbol, I've got the 2, I've got the parentheses here telling me to go inside there. I've still got the squared, but now inside I'm going to do the 6 plus the 9 first. 6 plus 9 is 15, and I still have the 15 over 3, which hopefully we don't think of as a fraction necessarily. We just think of it as a division problem. So now I evaluate inside the parentheses, which is just telling me to divide. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So I have a 2 times 5 squared. Now I have a multiplication, I have an exponent, and I know exponents come first. So this math problem becomes 2 times 5 times 5 is 25, and 2 times 25 is 50. All right, let's pick up the pace here and get this finished. We've got 2 more problems to do. So now we're going to get to a problem that says evaluate. So you'll notice again, we're bringing in that new word evaluate, different from simplify, because what it's implying here is it's telling me to evaluate this statement, which has variables in it, but it's telling me what the values of the variables are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace the variables with what they represent. So I'm going to rewrite the problem. This problem says 3 times a. So I'm going to write 3, and I'm going to use parentheses for multiplication. 3 times a is 7. So don't be confused. Yes, it's a grouping symbol, parentheses, but you'll notice there's nothing to do inside the parentheses. So it's a grouping symbol, but not really. And now it's just become a multiplication question. Minus the 2 cubed, I'll just write down for now, divided by b, but we already know that b is 4. So really, there's no difference in what we did now, we're doing now based on what we just did. I just have to set the problem up first. But now, once I've plugged in my variables, now I just do what I just did. So what's the order? I have an exponent. That has to come first. So I've got 3 times 7 minus 2 to the third power. That just means 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So I have an 8, and then I have it divided by 4. So as I analyze this problem, I have 3 operations. I have a multiply, a subtract, and a divide. So the subtract is the last thing I do. And so I'm going to do the 3 times 7. That's 21. And I'm going to have the minus. But now I have an 8 divided by 4 I need to do. And 8 divided by 4 is 2. Multiply and divide before subtract. So 21 minus 2 becomes 19. All right, and I think our last example, because I got 2 of them, but they should go quick. Still evaluating. So what's the first thing we're going to do? We're going to write the problem exactly as it's written, except I'm going to replace the C, which is a 3, and the D, which is a 2. And CD means C times D, so I'm going to use a dot here instead of X, because an X looks like a variable. And now I just need to simplify this. 3 times 2 we do first inside the parentheses, so I get 6 squared. 6 squared is 36. And the last one we're going to do today, we've got C times D squared. So I'm going to write it down. I have a 3 times, and you can use a parentheses if you want, a D, which is 2, and I'm squaring it. So what I need to be very careful is, we know exponents come before multiply. So I need to do this exponent 2 squared before I think about multiplying it by 3. Because the order tells us what to do, and we just have to pay attention to it. So this simply becomes 3 times 4, which we know is 12. All right, hopefully this has helped for anybody who needed to hear the lesson again. This is our first topic of the year, and it is reviewing order of operations. If you have any questions, please feel free to come see me after class, before class, during student support time, anytime you need.